Today we're going to be looking at the vertical method of multiplication. The vertical method will require you to have a really good knowledge of your times tables, so that is a great starting point. The vertical method is quite difficult and involves lots of steps, so it's important to take your time and do everything as best you can. First of all, we have to line our numbers up with the ones column and the tens column. These numbers here represent 3 and 2, whereas these numbers represent 20 and 10. It's very important that we recognize this. The first step when solving this problem will be to do the units first, the ones first. So, 2 times 3 is always our beginning step. The first unit times the first unit. 2 times 3 equals 6. So I've just done 2 times 3. Next I'm going to have to multiply the same unit by the 10. So 2 times 2. And the answer to that is 4. Very important that before we move on to our next multiplication factor, we must recognize that this is not a 1. It actually represents a 10. Because it's in the tens column, we must always draw a 0 here. Now that 0 is called a placeholder. Then we can go ahead and do 1 times 3, which equals 3, and then do 1 times 2, which equals 2. This is where it gets a little bit difficult, because now we're going to have to use our addition skills as well to finish off the problem. 6 and 0 equal 6. 4 and 3 equal 7. And 2 with nothing else is simply 2. So our answer of 23 times 12 equals 276. A really good set of explanations can be found in Chapter 2 on page 59 of the Alpha textbook. Moving on to a more complex question, 34 times 25. We know that these numbers are quite big, so if we multiply them together, the answer is going to be a very big number. It's worth checking at the end to see, just in case we haven't got a smaller number than we thought it might be. So we're going to start with the unit times the unit. 5 times 4 equals 20. Now 20 has 0 ones, 0 ental, so we can put down 0 here. And I'm going to have to carry the two tens, or the 2 tiotal, up to the next column. Worth remembering now that we have 2 extra 10s in that column. So, now I've done 5 times 4, the next question is 5 times 3. 5 times 3 equals 15. But I also have 2 extra 2's up here. So I've got 15 plus 2 equals 17. 17 has 7 ones in it, and it has 1 10. Now that 10 I want to carry up here, but it's got no number to sit on top of, so it's going to fall down here, and we write it underneath. As I've previously explained, because we're now moving on to the tens column, we must remember to draw a 0, the placeholder. Also, just to make things a bit easier, I'm going to cross out the 2 up here, because we've already used it and we don't need it anymore. So, we're going to start with the 10, the bottom 10, times the top unit, which 2 times 4 equals 8, and that goes down here. You could also look at that saying 20 times 4 equals 80. Next step would be to say the 10. 2 times 3. 2 times 3 equals 6. So I write that down the bottom. And there's no more questions which I have to do. So the last step was to add my two answers together. Starting with 0 and 0, which equals nothing. Moving on to 8 and 7, which equals 15. That means there's 5 down here, 5 in the tens column, and then I need to put 1 extra up into the hundreds column. So now I have 6, 1 and 1. Altogether that makes 8. So my answer is 850. There are some really good questions on pages 65 and 66 of the Alpha textbook. Remember, the important features which we've talked about today was the placeholder. Always need to put the placeholder in when we're multiplying by the tens column. Also, when it comes to the floating number on the top, we must add that after we have done the multiplication question.